Week 13 in Buffalo, 49ers lose 35-10 in a snow game. It was the worst weather game I've ever seen as a 49ers fan for a 49ers game. I mean, there had been the rain games, especially in the 90s. We had our rain games. We had the snow playoff game in Green Bay. But nothing compares to this snow game, where it was snowing from beginning to end, and it just got worse. 35-10 as this embarrassing season continues. I said last week's game to me was not embarrassing, the Packers lost, because you had excuses. Your starting quarterback was out. You had all kinds of great players, offense, defense, out. You're in Green Bay. But to have your starting quarterback in, to have Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel out there, and George Kittle, Fred Warner, to lose like this, and the game was over early. I mean, after the first quarter, it was over. The 49ers stopped the Bills quickly, and they looked good. They came out looking really sharp on defense, and they forced the Bills off the field. Quick punt. The 49ers go down the field. They kick a field goal and go up 3-0. And like the Super Bowls and so many of the games this season, the 49ers are settling for field goals. It was a nice drive. They were running the ball very effectively, especially early. But they're kicking field goals against Josh Allen and the Bills offense in the snow. And they continued to kick field goals in the snow. And it was getting ridiculous. But the Bills go down the field. Eventually, they get a touchdown, 7-3. That's the first quarter. The second quarter, Bills outscore the 49ers. It's 14-0 in the second quarter. The third quarter, 7-7. Fourth quarter, 7-0. Bills. So 35-10. Let's just compare quarterbacks quickly. Brock Purdy, no, he was not quite healthy, but he was good enough to go out there. 11 of 18 for 94 yards. It was snowing, but that's just not good enough. Josh Allen, 13 of 17, 148 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Both teams ran very well on the ground, and tackling was difficult. This playing defense was difficult in those kind of conditions. James Cook, 14 carries, 107 yards. He had a 65-yard run. Jordan Mason, 13 carries, 78 yards. He averaged 6 yards a carry at a long of 28. Christian McCaffrey, 7 carries, 53 yards. He was averaging 7.6 yards a carry. He had a long of 19 before the injury. And no one was particularly, both teams, the high receiver from yards on both sides was 56. Juwan Jennings, 3 receptions, 56. And Dawson Knox, 2 receptions, 56 yards. We could simplify this game. I'm not going to do a long review of it because the way the 49ers are playing, to me, it's not worth it. The difference in quarterbacks, that's one thing. I think the difference in coaching, that's another. Turnovers, obvious. And footing out there on the field. You just see the difference between Brock Purdy and Josh Allen, the physical difference between those two. And I'm a big Purdy fan. I defend Brock Purdy. I like Brock Purdy. At times he's a very good quarterback. I mean, at times he looks like a top 10 borderline. I mean, when he was playing his best football last year, you're talking about a top 5 quarterback. He had a sensational year last year, but it hasn't been so this year. There have been the injuries around him. There have been, I think, adjustments that teams have made to him. He's turned the football over more, and health. Health's been a factor too out there, but his limitations of not being able to play in bad weather, I don't think it's exaggerated when we saw the way he played in the rain. Divisional round against the Packers here in San Francisco or Santa Clara, and now the snow game, and yeah, this was terrible weather. But he really could not compete with Josh Allen. Josh Allen, he was affected, but he was still effective. He could still drive the ball down the field for those, intermediate passes. Brock Purdy couldn't do that. All you had was the short completions. I think Kyle Shanahan could have made it easier on Purdy. But you look at Josh Allen, you say that is one of the most talented, just physically, one of the most talented, arguably the most talented athlete to ever play quarterback. I mean, he's better than Cam Newton. Lamar's faster, but Josh Allen in the long run is bigger and stronger. He's a much better thrower of the football, even though Lamar's improved. But that's the type of player that you give the massive max contract to. You don't give it to Brock Purdy. As much as you like him, you don't give it to him. I think coaching philosophy, that once again you have Kyle Shanahan kicking field goals, and Sean McDermott, you could criticize him if you want, but he's been more aggressive. And he goes more on fourth downs. I'd like to see the 49ers be more aggressive, and they're supposed to be the team that's really desperate, and they weren't. They were kicking field goals in the snow. We're talking about 40-plus yard field goals in the snow in a game they really had to win. Then there was the turnovers. Brock just simply lost the ball. I'm not going in order here, but Brock Purdy just lost the ball. He wasn't hit. The ball just came out of his hand. We've seen that more than once this season. It wasn't just the snow. That's happened to him before in better conditions. Debo, again, he had 4 receptions for 20 yards. He had a big costly fumble. And the Kyle Juszczyk, this is the one that really killed the game for them. I mean, it was already going to be hard enough, but Kyle Juszczyk's fumble at the half-yard line, and then the Bills turn around, and they were lucky that it didn't get taken all the way back. And then I think just footing and conditions, the Bills obviously handled it better than the 49ers did. I mean, it seemed like the 49ers players were the ones slipping all over the place. Offense, defense. Their crew was much better prepared to deal with the snow. It's not like they play in the snow a lot, but they had the cleats prepared for this kind of snow game. And finally, the injuries. I mean, it gets to a certain point. There's so much to criticize about the 49ers and where Kyle Shanahan has his strengths, but he obviously has his weaknesses. Lack of adjustments. But this was just yet another example of, there's still, you see the good players out there, but what can you do at a certain point when your quarterback is playing but he's banged up? Christian McCaffrey gets injured, and he was rolling in this game. And yes, some of it was the snow and the conditions out there that, enabled him to be more effective. He just looked more like the explosive runner we knew from ever since he became a 49er. That Christian McCaffrey, and then he just kind of slides and falls down knowing that he's hurt. And it's a non-contact injury. And he was placed on IR today, out 6 weeks. His season's over. And his days of being the dominant back and being a Pro Bowl running back are over, because he can't stay healthy. I mean, he's a 28-year-old running back having multiple injuries. It was just a couple games and he got hurt again. He only played in a few games. What was it, 4 games this year? That's it. 3.5 games is all he played in. And then Jordan Mason goes down with an injury. He's on IR. I mean, he's averaging over 5 yards a carry this season. He's down. Obviously, Ayuk. Trent Williams missed a couple games now. We don't know how long he's going to be out. Defense. Nick Bosa missed a 2nd straight game. I don't know if he's going to play the rest of the season at all. Hargrave, Greenlaw, Ward came back, but then Lenore was out. There's too many injuries. And I already said the season was over. I mean, I am disappointed. It was an embarrassing loss. I mean, what Josh Allen did and him getting in the end zone on the ball that he got from Amari Cooper was an amazing play. What they called, well, at least ESPN calls it a hook and ladder touchdown, if you want to describe it that way. It was still embarrassing, though. I didn't have expectations. I just wanted to see a competitive game. And it was sad that, the window has closed. The season's over. It ended in the loss to Seattle. They haven't been able to put wins together this year at all. They lose the game in Seattle. They've had these terribly embarrassing losses at home to the Cardinals, to the Seahawks. Then you have a loss to the Rams like you did, and then you get blown out 2 weeks in a row to the Packers and Bills. You knew those were going to be tough games. But it really is a low point. Low point for Shanahan's 49ers. Not sure where to go from here. The season it's been over. It is over. And it's frustrating because, as I've said, you still have a lot of the good players out there, and they're gotten older or they're injured. They're frustrated. And their year to win was last year. I mean, that was the most frustrating part for me. So I said, okay, it's one thing to lose to the Chiefs as you did the first time in Super Bowl 54. It was a devastating loss. But to lose in that fashion, and then to lose again to the Rams in 21 when you were healthy. 20 was a lost season because of the injuries. You were healthy in 21. In 22, you were healthy until Brock Purdy got hurt. Last year they came back, and for the most part they had a healthy team. And these guys were in their primes. And you were never going to get a better version than Christian McCaffrey last year. And they couldn't get it done against the Chiefs again. And I remember saying that, right after that Super Bowl. You had your guys, you had a healthy squad, you have them in their primes, and you blew it. You're not going to get another opportunity like that again with this group. And this season feels so much like 2020 all over again. Both situations, actually. both seasons when they played the Bills, they had teams that were just crushed and decimated with injuries. I mean, Nick Bosa didn't play in the game in 2020, didn't play in the game yesterday, and yeah, Josh Allen in both games was outstanding. In different circumstances, different seasons. And Chris Collinsworth was saying, well, I've never seen the 49ers look like this. Well, again, the injuries. And I agree, sure, but the injuries. I mean, and did I even mention, right, Fred Warner playing on a fractured ankle? At least, we were wondering about that. It's like, what happened to Fred Warner? Did he ever recover from the ankle injury? And then you find out, oh, he's been playing on a fractured ankle. He still managed to play pretty well, but clearly below the standard that we expect. I mean, he was playing out of his mind for the first couple games this season, and then he had that ankle injury, and he's never looked right since. Still toughing it out. But yeah, you're not used to seeing the 49ers being pushed around, and this would have been a great Sunday night game. Last year, I think the 49ers, last year's team, you could play this game, but last year's team would have beat the Packers. Last year's team would have beat this Bills team. I mean, in a snow game, oh, how physical it would have been with last year's team. Yeah, I think they would have beat the Bills in the snow. And it's too bad. It's too bad. The Bills played a weak 49ers team in 2020. They beat a weak 49ers team when they're down in 2024. And maybe it will be the Bills' year. But they're going to have to get through the Chiefs. One way or another. I don't see the Chiefs getting knocked out by one of the other teams. The Texans are too young and inexperienced. The Steelers are having a nice season. But you tell me the Steelers are going to Kansas City and beat the Chiefs? I don't think so. And the Ravens are interesting, but did you see how the Eagles handled them? And the Eagles are very good. I would not be surprised if the Eagles came out of the NFC and beat the Lions. We could have an Eagles, Chiefs, Eagles, Bills Super Bowl. But one of the most frustrating seasons as a 49ers fan because of the expectations, because of all these close to Super Bowls and not either reaching the Super Bowl or losing it at the end. And I'm not planning on doing any more 49er reviews for this season because they're done. So I'm done.